Ave Coders, and welcome to the crash course on Python and SQLite, where we'll learn the basic CRUD operations, such as we'll learn to create the database, read the data from the database, insert the data into the database, update the data, and finally delete the data. Now, the SQLite is a fantastic database for the beginners because it is generally an embedded database, not a client-server database, which means that we don't need to spin up a separate server for it. Rather, we'll just import the SQLite 3 module and interact with the database via some simple function calls. But first, let's create a virtual environment. So how do we create a virtual environment? Well, first of all, we pip install virtual env. And now we need to create our virtual environment. So we write the following script, python -m vnv, and then the name of our virtual environment. In my case, it will be SQLite workspace. And after running this script in the working directory, you'll notice a new folder, SQLite workspace. Now let's cd into our virtual environment and activate it. Now, if you are on Linux or Mac, all you need to do is write source and then bin and activate. But if you are on Windows like myself, all you need to write is scripts and activate with a backslashes, of course. And if you'll see in the terminal the name of our virtual environment, that means that we have successfully activated and now we are working from within our virtual environment. All right, let's create our Python file. We'll call it SQLite products.py. And at the top of the file, we import SQLite 3 module. And this SQLite 3 module gives us the tools to interact with the database. Let's begin our interactions by establishing a connection via the method called connect. Inside of this method, we need to specify the name of our database. In our case, it will be something like products SQLite.db. So not only this method will establish the connection, but also if our database doesn't exist yet, like in our case, it will create the database for us. But after we run the script, we notice that nothing happens. This is because we need to supply several other methods to make this operation successful. So after we save our connection into this object connection, we can call another method called commit. The mechanics is pretty much similar to Git, where this commit method just commits all transactions that we have built up to this point. And then, of course, we need to close the connection. After running the script, you can notice that our database was created, and you can observe it now in the working directory. All right, now that we're all set up, let's clear some space. And first things first, let's introduce a cursor. So in essence, the cursor is a mechanism that enables us to traverse over the records in our database. So we call the cursor method on our connection object and we save the result into the new object called cursor. And then we can use another method called execute on this cursor object to pretty much interact with our database via the SQL requests. So basically, this execute method is responsible for executing the SQL queries. Let's use it to create a table in our database. So I'm using the triple apostrophes or quotes because we'll have a multi-line SQL query. So we say create table if not exist. So if the table doesn't exist yet, the name of the table is products. So which fields are we going to specify for our table? Well, first of all, it's going to be the product ID and it's going to be of the type integer. Product ID also is going to be our primary key, and we also want it to auto increment as we add more records. Another field will contain the name of the product we are listing. So it's going to be of the type text, which is roughly equivalent to the Python data type string. The next field is the name of the supplier who supposedly supplying us with this product, and it's going to be of the type text as well. And finally, the price per ton, and it's going to be of the type int. So this type int will be casted into an integer, but for the primary key, this would not work. So we would need to specify integer as the whole word. All right, so we have created our schema, but there's nothing there in our table just yet. So if we'll execute the select all statement, it will return nothing. So inside of this execute method, we write a select star from products statement, and as I'm launching the script, nothing really happens. And just to confirm that, I will write a print statement, and inside the print statement, I'll write cursor and fetch all. And when I run it, you see nothing is returned. So let's populate our table. So let's move our select from statement a bit further down and clear some space and define the products we want to insert into our table. So let's say for this training example, we'll only have 3 products. And let's imagine that we are running a wholesale fruit company of some sort. So the first product will be bananas, and the supplier will be United Bananas, and it will cost 7,000 of money. The next one is avocados, United Avocados as a supplier, and let's say 12,000 for them. And the last one is tomatoes, United Tomatoes, and the price is slightly lower, 3,100. Now, since essentially we have multiple objects that we're going to turn into multiple records, instead of cursor.execute, we need to use cursor.execute many. And inside of this multi-line SQL query, we're going to specify that we want to insert. Then where to we want to insert, so into our table products. Then we need to list the fields we will populate, such as product, supplier, and price per ton. And then on the new line, we're going to use the keyword values. And essentially, we're going to be using the placeholder mechanism. So we're going to specify 3 question marks. And when our query will run, we'll substitute these question marks, these placeholders, with real values from our product to insert. I need to move the closing bracket so that the function will work. Let's run the script, and we can see that select all also been triggered, and it returned all products that we have currently in our table. So now that we have populated our table, we have some data to work with. But let's comment the execute many out so that the insertion wouldn't happen every time we run something else. Let's try another select statement, but this time, instead of selecting everything, we'll select just the suppliers. So we type select supplier from products. Again, we need to provide a cursor fetch all method within the print if we want to see the result in the console. And as you can see, we have 3 suppliers. Apart from that, we can perform the selection with some condition. For example, we can type select all from the table products, but with the price per ton. So we write where price per ton, and we put a placeholder there. And above that line, we specify the price. Let's say it's going to be equal to 12,000 money, and we put this price to the query. Let me copy another print statement and run the script and see what we'll get. And basically, that will be just the avocados, because this is the only fruit that we have with the price 12,000 per ton. But we can also use less than or greater than as well. Other than selecting and inserting something into our table, we can also update the records in our table with the SQL query that starts with update. Then, of course, we provide the name of our table products and then the keyword set. So we want to set a supplier with a value of United Fruits, but we don't want to set any supplier, or otherwise we'll set all of them to be equal to United Fruits. So we need to provide a condition where price per ton and placeholder again. And here we provide the value for our condition. We'll call it United Fruit Price, and it will be equal to, let's say, 7,000. And we put it here into the query. I'll copy the print statement, but it is not necessary for the update clause. I'll show you why in a second. Don't forget the quotes around United Fruits because it's 2 words. And as you can see, we have nothing returned because the update query doesn't really return anything. It just updates the value inside the table, so in place. Basically, to see the changes, we'll need to read the data from the table again. So we perform the select supplier query, and as you can see, the first value is United Fruits, where United Bananas used to be. And the last CRUD operation, which letter D stands for, is of course the delete. And again, we don't want to delete everything, otherwise we could have just dropped the table. So we type delete from products, and then we'll impose a condition. So we type where, and here the condition will be the product ID to be equal to a certain value. Let's say we want to get rid of tomatoes, and so the product ID will be equal to 3. So we run the code, and we'll need another select statement. And let's say this time we'll use select all. We place it just below our last query, and if we run the code again, we'll see that we only have 2 records now. So the bananas and avocados, tomatoes are gone. So this was a crash course on interaction with the SQLite database using SQL queries. Next time, we'll study the ORM called SQL Alchemy, which you have probably heard of. But for now, please give this video an Emperor's thumbs up, toll the bell, and subscribe to the channel. That was V, and I'll see you in a bite.